you don't realize how privileged you are. Now, let's go into the wealth part a little bit more. So, global wealth distribution. The top 1% of the world's population owns 44% of the world's wealth. The bottom 50% owns less than 1%. Think about that. The top 1%, okay? That means 99% of the world owns the remaining, like 56% of the wealth. The top 1% is 44% of the world's wealth, okay?
Do us a quick favor, guys. Hit the follow, subscribe button. Share this with someone who would benefit from it. And help us grow, as the more we grow, the better the episodes will get. Thanks, guys, for helping us. And let's get into the episode.
Welcome to this episode of the SCULPTED podcast. In this episode, we are going through how I believe that it's your duty to work your ass off. Now, this is a very confronting almost episode. It's really going deep into a lot of the thoughts that I have. It goes deep into a lot of the things that I say, the way that I act, the reason why I act. And I've come prepared, as I used to do a lot of the time when I was doing this whilst I was in Germany, actually, and when I first came back to Australia and was doing these podcasts where, yeah, I was really just preparing like documents upon documents, and it'd almost be like a script. And I've got that again today. Now, I do really like when I do those episodes because it helps me kind of articulate my thoughts a little bit better, put reasoning behind my beliefs as well, and then also question them and then quite often validate them. I try and like give as much friction to some of these beliefs as possible because I'm aware that I have confirmation bias. I'm aware that I have cognitive dissonance. I'm aware of all these specific things. Now, that's something that I do want to preface, right? This may be completely wrong. This is merely an opinion, but I do try and come as informed as possible when I do make such outrageous claims, you could say. But let's get into it. So, what do I mean by it's your duty to work your ass off? Well, there's a few different reasons why I believe that it's my duty to work my ass off. Because one, I'm very privileged. Two, I've been put in a position where I have enough wealth in terms of my family. Me personally, it's a different story. And also my family aren't the wealthiest either, but in terms of being privileged, that's a reason for action. Okay. Like for me, I am so privileged. I'm so lucky to have enough wealth that I don't truly have to worry too much about where, food is going to be coming from. There's also a thing called the opportunity disparity. Now, I'll go into that a little bit more, where my opportunity disparity is really, really actually, I don't know how you'd measure it. I'd say it's pretty low because no matter what happens to me, I'm still in a better position than some other people, a high chunk of the percentage of the world, to where if the worst thing in the world happened to me, I've probably still got a higher chance to make something and to really survive than most people in this planet. Now, when I make such outrageous claims like that, maybe they're not too outrageous, but I'll also go into a bit more depth to why I think that it is my duty to work my ass off, because I think that we are so privileged. Well, me specifically, I am very privileged. And there's definitely people, you may be listening, you're probably even more privileged than me. I wouldn't say that I'm extremely privileged compared to, I got to say, most Australians are probably in this situation, like middle income kind of, socioeconomic class, you could say. So I'd probably say I'm low middle class. And that's probably, a standard thing for most Australians. We're very fortunate to live in this country where we don't have to worry about too much. And that brings me on to my privilege, right? So a lot of people who are lazy, who take things for granted, they don't realize how privileged they are. So they have a lack of awareness. And according to a study by the Pew Research Center, 77% of Americans believe they have achieved the American dream or are on their way to achieving it despite significant disparities in income, education, and opportunities. Now, that's not necessarily something that will relate to you specifically, most likely. I don't even think many Americans listen to this podcast, but most of them, let's say at least, how we could relate this to you. You're probably not where you actually are. Let's just say that. Like for me to say that I'm probably low middle class, I don't even know how I'd really judge that. I might be actually higher. I might be lower. I don't know. So what I'm trying to get with that point is we think we are something, but actually aren't it. Now, Americans thinking that they're 77% of Americans believe they have achieved the American dream or on their way to achieving it. Now, quite potentially they are. That could be a thing. I think that the American dream has probably changed in a degree. I don't know too much about what this so-called American dream is, but you hear about it. I think it's basically just a standard of living where you don't have to worry too much. I assume that's kind of what it is. So I guess in America, most of them would probably be there. There's going to be exceptions, of course, and I don't know enough about America to really have a bold stance on that. But the next one that I have is a survey by YouGov found that only 15% of Americans believe they are in the top income bracket, while 89% of Americans actually fall within top 20% globally in terms of income, which is a really big thing. So what's that is actually saying is that 15% of Americans, okay? Only 15. That means that there's another, 85% of Americans believe they are in the top bracket. Whilst actually, almost 90% of America in total is actually in the top 20%. So that's a massive disparity. That's 10% of the population are outside of that 20%. The rest are all within that 20%. That means that most of the wealth in the world is in this country. Like that's crazy to actually understand. And, the other Western countries like Australia, the UK, a fair chunk of Europe, you could say, we're the West and arguably we're the wealthy ones. We don't have to worry about these specific things, and we make up the top 20% of the global population not global population. Sorry, we make up the total global source of income pretty much, and we don't realize that. That's highlighting that there's around, if I do the maths, around 75% of Americans who don't realize how privileged they are. 75% of Americans don't realize how privileged they are. And it also then says in the stat above that 77% of Americans think that they're on the American dream. So if you're doing that maths there, 75% of the 77%, they're really, really delusional. Now, maybe it's like fair delusion, and maybe delusion is not the right word, but they are unaware of how privileged they are. Think about that. You don't realize how privileged you are. Now, let's go into the wealth part a little bit more. So, global wealth distribution. The top 1% of the world's population owns 44% of the world's wealth. The bottom 50% owns less than 1%. Think about that. The top 1%, okay? That means 99% of the world owns the remaining, 56% of the wealth. The top 1% is 44% of the world's wealth, okay? Now, that's not necessarily talking about privilege in that sense, but it is talking about the top 1%. They really have it good, okay? Looking at the next step. The combined wealth of the world's 2,153 billionaires exceeds the total wealth of 4.6 billion people, representing 60% of the world's population. Okay, that's a ridiculous thing to kind of conceptualize. Again, this doesn't have direct influence to why I necessarily feel like I need to work my ass off, but it's going into the fact of how unaware we are to specific things. Because also, you've got that 1% or whatever, 2,153 billionaires is definitely much, much less than 1%. It's probably like 0.00001%. Exceeds the total wealth of 4.6 billion people. That's wild. So, again, it's not necessarily directly correlating to why I work my ass off or why I believe I need to and I believe I have a duty to do so, but it's kind of giving you the awareness to understand why, you are really privileged. And the wealth factor is also another contributing factor to the opportunity disparity. So, going into the income disparities, the World Bank reports that the average income in high-income countries is approximately $41,300 compared to just $720 in low-income countries. So, whatever percentage that is, it's like a massive difference. Okay, I don't know almost $1,000 is of 40,000, but it's a very, very small percent. Now, yeah, it's very fair to say as well, that's $720 in a country like Bali or Thailand, where they're less privileged and maybe it doesn't just cost as much money to live there. It's going to be a little bit more efficient, but still, it is a very, very small amount. You hear the ridiculous stories about people who, travel for miles just to get $2 for a bucket of water and things like that. And that's all they can live off. Those stories are truly real. We don't realize that that's actually a real thing. And when you think about that at a truly deep level, I think that anyone who isn't doing everything that they can to make the best out of their situation, honestly, I have an issue with. I think that you're being lazy and you owe it to the other people. Because guess what? There's someone working.
Hey guys, I don't want to interrupt this episode, but gotta do what I gotta do. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you leave a comment if you enjoyed it. If you want any to give any feedback, even just leave that below. We're open to everything. Join the Patreon, guys. There's gonna be a lot more stuff on there. We want to hear from you guys as well. We want to get you involved. If you want to be beta testers to the SCULPTED app, let me know. I can make that happen. Try and get involved at any level. What we're doing at Live Free, guys, make sure you check what we're doing there. Liam's got his own personal YouTube channel. He's always uploading. I've got my own personal YouTube channel that I've started uploading twice a month now. It's going to be cinematic like I am now, right? I've got the light above, got a cool camera. That's what I'm going to be working on, guys. So make sure you follow Live Free Diaries. SCULPTED app. We're doing great stuff over there. Additionally, we want to grow this podcast, guys. And the only way we can do that is through your guys' help. So make sure you subscribe, listen to us on all audio platforms. We're everywhere. So make sure you interact with us. Make sure that you help us grow, because the only way that we can grow this podcast is through you. We'll get better guests. We've always had great guests from the get-go, but we'll get even better guests on. Production value will go up. I've got my studio, but we need to get Liam his studio, and the only way we can do that is through monetizing this platform. So make sure you do that, guys. And I'll go back to the episode. I'll let you go.
So much harder than you right now. And it's not even in terms of I'm working hard as in like I want to become the X, Y, or Z. They're just working hard in terms of struggle. They're struggling so much more than you. They're in such more of a dire need than you are, yet you take for granted so much. I honestly think that's offensive. Genuinely, I think that's actually a little bit offensive. No, not a little bit. I think that is offensive. The fact that you're okay to sleep in, the fact that you're okay with just an average life. Do you understand how privileged you are? Do you understand that there's literally a guy 20,000 kilometers away who is on the other side of the world? Most people would probably be 20,000 kilometers away from where the most underprivileged people are in the world. And he's waking up every day. He's not even barely sleeping. He's barely eating. And he has to go and find the meal for his family. He has to go make $2.50 every month or something to go put food on his family's plate. He doesn't worry about happiness. He doesn't worry about what's happening. He doesn't even worry about necessarily what's happening yesterday. He just needs to make sure that today they can eat. Whilst you're over here worrying about all of these stupid things, and you're making up things to, start worrying about that are so irrelevant. You start worrying about things that you've made up because you've got no other problems to start worrying about. Whilst there's someone on the other side of the world who cannot even worry about the past. They can only worry about what's literally in front of them now and how they can live. That disparity it's crazy to think about. And the fact that we take it for granted, again, it's offensive. It's truly offensive, because if that person who doesn't even know you exist, doesn't even know what it's like outside of what their world is, if they saw you doing absolutely nothing, then goodness me, you owe it to them to work your ass off. You owe it to them. Okay. The median income in the United States is around $68,700 USD, placing the typical American household in the top 0.01% of global income earners. Now, to be fair, I don't even get how that stat works. But I guess if the average income in the USA, if they've got 250 million people who live in the US, I think it is, they equate for the 0.01% of the global income earners. That's pretty crazy to think about. That's a big disparity. So to dissect that, it's very hard to kind of just dissect it with you now. I hopefully have done a few infographics that help you understand it a little bit more. Okay. Going to access to the basic necessities. So 690 million people worldwide suffer from hunger. That's, 3x the whole of America in population. 690 million people suffer worldwide from hunger. That means that they're hungry every single day. Okay? Most people here who are listening probably haven't even gone without food for more than a few hours. Okay? That's ridiculous. You are so stuck in your comfort zone that you refuse to acknowledge that other people don't even get to eat on some days. And you take that for granted so much. You take everything for granted. And I'm guilty of it too. I'm guilty of it. I take things for granted. I don't realize how privileged I am sometimes. But also, if you ever wonder why I feel a necessity to do things or to do more than anyone else, it's because I feel like if even 1% of those people were to be watching me live, if there was a projection of the Nicholas Craddockville life in some of these countries where there's 690 million people suffering from worldwide hunger, as if they're the watchers of the Truman Show and they've watched the Nicholas Craddockville show live in front of them. It's been broadcasted to the 690 million people. Do you think that it would be appropriate for me to just sit in my bed, go downstairs, get a bit of food, just nibble at everything I can, in extremely gluttonous behavior, take everything for granted, go back upstairs, start playing the PlayStation, start playing a bit of video games, doing whatever I like, going to see my friends whenever I want? Do you think that those 690 million people would be pleased with my efforts, assuming that they don't have to go find them their next meal whilst they're watching it? Those 690 million people would be getting their dirt and throwing it at that screen as quickly as they can, as hard as they can, for as long as they can. Because they would not be okay with the effort that I give. And guess what? That's probably what most people do. Maybe not to that extreme level of what I was explaining, but most people will live a pretty sedentary life, taking most things for granted, whilst there's so many people who are literally fighting for the next meal. 690 million is around, I think, 7% of the world population. So around 7% of the world population literally is fighting for survival every single day. That's crazy. Okay, 1 in 10 people globally lack access to clean water, while in sub-Saharan Africa, this figure rises to 2 out of 5 people. Okay, so that's literally even higher than 10%. That's like 11 to 12% of people. Again, imagine I'm being globally broadcasted to maybe 1 in 10 is probably like 100 million people, maybe. Oh, maths might be a bit shaky here. But think about that. Actually, is my maths completely wrong? I think 100 million is a billion. Gosh, that could be really embarrassing. That was the last example. Okay, 1 in 10 people. Anyways, being projected to the 1 in 10 people of the globe, and they're watching me just take things for granted. They're just watching me, go about my day, not caring about all these things that they have to care about on a daily basis. That is actually offensive. It's truly offensive. Like, I have a massive issue with that. That's why I'm not a fan of people who can't realize how privileged they are. It actually is your duty to work your ass off, because you take it for granted. If you aren't waking up every single day thinking about how you're privileged, and then, again, not to say that I do this every single day, but I do right every single day when I go to bed before I go to sleep, how privileged I am, how lucky I am to be in a position where I don't have to worry about these specific things. And these stats just put it into perspective, right? Education opportunities. Now, I don't completely believe all the time that education is a direct correlation to becoming well off, although it is a very good reference point to see if a country has enough money to worry about education, that they're probably well, right? If you can't even worry about educating the kids in a country, then it probably means you've got more important things that matter. And education is up there in the most important things as a younger child. Okay, so if your country can't even worry about that, then that means that they've got some things that probably aren't going too well. So, education opportunities. more than 258 million children and youth are out of school with poverty. So that is, again, a massive figure. That means that 258 million people, those same people who can't get the education, it means that they have more important things in their life that they have to worry about every single day. And I bet that 690 million people who suffer from daily worldwide hunger, I bet half of them are that 258 million children who are out of school as well. Because that truly means that they've got stuff that really, really matters. And guess what? They're not thinking about, oh, what car do I need to get? What nice car am I saving up for? And that's your biggest problem. Your biggest problem might be what car it is. Oh, you got fired from your job. That was really, really nice. Maybe you're unemployed and, but I just want to play PlayStation all day. I just want to play video games all day. I just want to spend time with my friends. That's your biggest problem. That's crazy. If that's your biggest problem, you need a reality check. Like, that's when, if I ever have a problem, all I need to do is just look at this page. And I'm just thinking, 690 million people worldwide suffer from hunger. Do I really have a problem? No, I probably don't have much of a problem, do I? Like, I'll probably just, put that aside, make sure I fix it, and put it into perspective. I don't have any problems. I truly don't have many problems at all that should even worry most people in the world. Okay. In low-income countries, only 65% of primary-age children are enrolled in school, compared to nearly 90% of high-income countries. Again, it's just showing that if you aren't in education, it means that the country that you're living in doesn't have the ability to even fund schools. Schools are very expensive, sure. But that's probably the number one thing a country invests in, because that's literally just investing in your future. If you can invest in your future, then you're going to be doing better no matter what in the future, basically. That's why you do it. Now, if you can't do that, that means you're on a downwards trajectory. Schooling at least will help you in an upwards trajectory. If you can't even invest in that, then it's just downwards, because you are fighting for survival at that point. Now, going into the opportunity disparity. In Western countries, education is often seen as a fundamental right, with robust systems in place to ensure access to schooling for all children. This fosters a culture of lifelong learning and personal development. Conversely, in many impoverished nations, education is a luxury rather than a given. Limited resources, including schools, teachers, and educational matters, mean that millions of children are deprived of the opportunity to learn and grow intellectually. According to UNESCO, around 258 million children and youth worldwide do not attend school, with the majority living in low-income countries. In sub-Saharan Africa, only 64% of children complete primary school and just 40% of adolescents attend.
Hey guys, I don't want to interrupt this episode, but gotta do what I gotta do. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you leave a comment if you enjoyed it. If you want any to give any feedback, even just leave that below. We're open to everything. Join the Patreon, guys. There's gonna be a lot more stuff on there. We want to hear from you guys as well. We want to get you involved. If you want to be beta testers to the SCULPTED app, let me know. I can make that happen. Try and get involved at any level. What we're doing at Live Free, guys, make sure you check what we're doing there. Liam's got his own personal YouTube channel. He's always uploading. I've got my own personal YouTube channel that I've started uploading twice a month now. It's going to be cinematic like I am now, right? I've got the light above, got a cool camera. That's what I'm going to be working on, guys. So make sure you follow Live Free Diaries. SCULPTED app. We're doing great stuff over there. Additionally, we want to grow this podcast, guys. And the only way we can do that is through your guys' help. So make sure you subscribe, listen to us on all audio platforms. We're everywhere. So make sure you interact with us. Make sure that you help us grow, because the only way that we can grow this podcast is through you. We'll get better guests. We've always had great guests from the get-go, but we'll get even better guests on. Production value will go up. I've got my studio, but we need to get Liam his studio, and the only way we can do that is through monetizing this platform. So make sure you do that, guys. And I'll go back to the episode. I'll let you go.
Secondary school. In contrast, high-income countries typically have near-universal primary and secondary school enrollment rates with access to higher education opportunities. Okay. The economic mobility. Western societies generally offer more avenues for economic advancement with support systems such as social welfare programs, job training initiatives, and accessible financial services. In contrast, individuals in impoverished nations often face systemic barriers to economic mobility, including lack of job opportunities, inadequate infrastructure, and political instability, which often perpetuate cycles of poverty and inequality. The World Bank reports that over 700 million people worldwide live in extreme poverty. I guess that's pretty much that 690. That's 600. I can even say 699. 690 million stat about the impoverished people who are fighting for survival. That's probably that same stat. Surviving on less than $1.90 per day. $1.90 per day US dollars. Again, you're gonna argue that okay, yeah, $1.90 for them is probably like a heap. Because, to buy a bottle of water for them, which I probably don't have access to, is much cheaper. Maybe their $1.90 is equivalent to like our $100. Nah, it wouldn't be actually, to be fair. It wouldn't be nothing. It would be truly nothing. Yeah. Disregard what I just said there. $1.90 for them is still absolutely nothing. In developed countries such as the United States, individuals in the bottom income quintile still have higher average income than 68% of the global population. So that's basically that bottom 10%, I think it is, still have an average higher income than 68% of the global population. Okay. Conversely, individuals in countries like North Korea face extreme economic hardship with limited opportunities for upward mobility due to government control and isolation for the global economy. Now, Kim Jong-un, if you're listening, please don't hurt me. Obviously, he's not listening. But a country like North Korea, let's find out what the population of North Korea is. I think it's maybe 20 million. No, it's more than Australia. North Korea population. Yeah, damn, I was actually spot on. It's 26 million. North Korea, let's see Australia. I think Australia actually is 26 million now. Australia population. 26 million, okay. Pretty much the same. So, imagine the whole of Australia. Australia's done very well for the confusing economic landscape that Australia is, which, from my understanding, doesn't really make too much sense how we're doing so well in the economy. But regardless, I don't know enough about the economy to really have a strong enough opinion on that. But imagine a country like Australia, the opportunity potential that Australia has, so does North Korea. But it's been stripped away from every single civilian of that country. You cannot leave. You'll be killed if you do. If you are caught for leaving, which also has now become borderline impossible, you will be killed if you're found. Like, there's a story from a famous South Korean lady, North Korean, sorry. I think her name is, hold on, let me find. She's got a Yeonmi Park. Now, I don't know if I butchered that, but she's got a pretty crazy story. And if you've heard a bit about her story, you'd know that, like, it's not as easy as just escaping. Because they'll take advantage of you, because they know you're from North Korea. They know that you're literally chasing from it's life or death. So they know that if they can just help you and abuse you as much as possible, but you still live at the end of the day, I mean, that's completely fine for them. You get used and abused literally after escaping North Korea, which is something that you couldn't control. And now it's your responsibility to try and get out of that situation. That's crazy. That's genuinely crazy. Okay. Where were we? North Korea. So, freedom and agency. Western democracies pride themselves on values such as freedom of speech, individual rights, and political participation, which empower citizens to shape their own destinies and advocate for change. Now, of course, tell you with a grain of salt, as much as we do have the freedom to do a lot of things, we don't necessarily have the freedom to do everything we like, because we are slaves to our own systems in that point. And I don't want to get into it too much, but the reason I'm not saying that we're actually like slaves to a system, but we're slaves to our own system. If you want to have a great life in terms of living in this world right now, you can't just live in the jungle and try and fight for yourself. You'll probably die. And if not, you'll probably be kicked out of that jungle anyways. So we are slaves to the system of what we want. So if I want to have a successful life, then I will have to be a slave to a successful life. And it may be a nice lifestyle. You may be able to tolerate it, but you still are a slave to that system. I am a slave to the system of trying to become successful. That means that every single day I am doing something that maybe is counterintuitive to becoming the best version of myself, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's a vessel for me to do so, but in an ideal world when I didn't have to worry about all these things and everything was a given, which is a complete hypothetical situation which would never happen, I still am a slave to the system of trying to survive for myself and trying to make a great life for the rest of my family. And it's a necessary sacrifice that every single person needs to make in their life. Some do it to a much higher of an extent than others. Some do it to a much lower extent than others. But we do have some freedom and agency. Well, we have a lot of freedom and agency in the West to do what we want and do it to the best of our ability, which links into the opportunity disparity. So, in contrast, individuals in impoverished nations may face significant health challenges due to the lack of access to clean water, sanitation, and healthcare services, leading to higher rates of disease and mortality. Now, imagine everything that I just explained in the Western countries, where we take all of that for granted, where we literally can do whatever we want, and we can shape our own destinies and genuinely do whatever we want. But then you get sick, and all of a sudden you die from a common cold. Like in an impoverished nation where you have no access to healthcare and anything like that, you'll probably just die. Think about that. So that's the opportunity disparity. Okay. Individuals in oppressed or authoritarian regimes, authoritarian regimes may lack basic freedoms and agencies, living under regimes that suppress dissent, stifle innovation, and limit opportunities for personal and collective growth. The World's Justice Project Rule of Law Index ranks countries based on factors such as constraints on government powers, absence of corruption, and fundamental rights. Western democracies consistently rank higher on these indices compared to authoritarian regimes. In North Korea, citizens face severe restrictions on their freedoms, including limited access to information, strict controls on movement, and harsh consequences for dissent. Now, the reason why North Korea is such an interesting topic for this subject is primarily because it's an extreme that most people would probably just like make up a hypothetical situation and lean onto that. If I was to get a point across, quite often I would give two extremes and I would basically explain why extreme A is better than extreme B or vice versa, because it's just the most easy way to see what's good and bad. But North Korea is literally the worst it could be. North Korea is the worst of the worst. And, you know, I think primarily throughout history, we've always had the complete really, really, really bad. We've never had the complete, like, freedom, because with complete freedom, it also means that, like, too much freedom is also bad. In terms of if everyone can just do what they do, we won't have everyone for much longer. So there has to be a degree of, I guess, governance. Governance is probably the right word. You do have to have a degree of governance to make sure that there is a social conformity where you all have your own like interest at heart. The reason why I can go into a roundabout and have confidence that no one isn't going to speed up and try and, you know, ram me up the rear ends, which, you know, can happen, is because most people just socially agree, okay, I'm not going to do the wrong thing by you, you don't do the wrong thing by me, let's live the best of our lives and we'll all live happily ever after. Of course, it's not the actual situation, but you get what I'm saying, right? We do have a social contract with each other. Some people don't, some people do. But in most Western societies, we have that social contract. Now, North Korea, it's just a different story. It's just a different story. Okay. Going back to the health part, which I briefly went into before. Individuals in impoverished nations may face significant health challenges due to lack of access to clean water, sanitation, and healthcare services, leading to higher rates of disease and mortality. So, actually, that is the stat that I read. In Western countries, access to healthcare and social services is often more readily available, contributing to better health outcomes and overall quality of life. Yeah, I mean, overall quality of life is interesting, right? Because it only takes one disease to kill you. But if you've got access to healthcare, then you're going to live a better life and you're going to live a longer life. So even the quality of life, it's actually just life in general. You just have a longer life in the Western countries just naturally because you will live longer because, obviously, but because you have access to these healthcare and the health institutes, all of these hospitals, things like that. I don't know what a stat would be, but it would probably like triple your age expectancy, your life expectancy. So having access to healthcare is so important. Okay. The World Health Organization estimates that over half of the world's population still lacks access to essential health services. That is pretty crazy. So 4 billion people lack access to essential health services. I mean, I don't know where you are listening to this, but most likely, if you're even able to listen to this, you can probably go to a hospital and you'll be taken care of. Maybe it's not as good as Australia or the UK. I think Australia, UK, Canada, and the Norwegian countries probably have the best hospitals in the world, and Germany. But if you're outside of those countries, America's a little bit different. You still have access, but you've got to have the funds to do so, from my understanding. We just take it for granted. We're just so privileged that these things don't even come into our mind. Okay. In sub-Saharan Africa, 1 in 13 children die before their 5th birthday, often due to preventable diseases such as malaria, pneumonia, and diarrhea. That's crazy. I mean, malaria, pneumonia, and diarrhea, I think most people who are listening to this right now probably have had one of them before, if not 2. I think malaria is probably not one that most people would have had, but pneumonia and diarrhea, probably almost every single person listening has probably had both of them. So imagine, that's probably the first time that most of these children at the age of 5 would be getting it. That means that disease just kills them straight away. That's ridiculous. You don't even get a chance to fight back because you're 5. You've got no chance. 1 in 13 children die from a very, very avoidable disease. Okay. In comparison, individuals in Western countries benefit from comprehensive healthcare systems and higher life expectancy with access to advanced medical treatments and technologies. Okay. Yeah. There's so much lack of awareness that we have. We don't realize about how privileged we are. The fact we don't have to worry about these things. The fact that there's so many people, such a large percent of the population, those people, they don't take things for granted because they don't know what it's like to be where we are. That's all they know. They won't be able to access this podcast because they don't have the facilities to do so. So they'll never know what it's truly like to be in my life. And it's such a contrast that we refuse to even acknowledge because we don't know what happens over there. We don't know what happens. That's why philanthropy is probably becoming more prevalent as we start to see what's happening more and more. That's why people are donating more, because we see it more. We've got access to seeing, what truly happens in the deserts, what happens in the middle of Africa and the driest places of the world, what's happening to impoverished nations where people can't survive and people can't eat food. We're becoming more aware of it, which is a good thing. And we're trying to help those people. But how do we truly fix it? Honestly, if you're asking me, you're speaking to the wrong guy. You probably weren't asking me anyways. But that's a large chunk of how we're so unaware and we lack awareness to why it is truly your duty to work your ass off. Now, another reason why I also do believe it is my duty to work my ass off. So, obviously, if you listen to this podcast, you'd know that I have a very strong Christian faith. Now, the reason for that is I grew up in a Christian household. I grew up going to a Christian school. I always would say that I have been a Christian. I will always say that I have tried to be the best that I can as a Christian, and I think it also just complements my character as well. I think that, it's a typical kind of Western religion, you could say, Christianity. But I'll go into a little bit more about why also I think in the Bible, it also confirms that it is your duty to work your ass off. Because of all those reasons that I just mentioned before, it still stands. It still has a lot of validity to it. So going into that. Okay. Philippians 3:14. I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Now, that one's just talking a little bit how everything that you should do it's for God. Now, is arguably sitting in your bed, waking up late, all of that stuff, not for God, well, I would say it's not really serving him. It's not doing anything productive for him. And that's why I always try and make sure that everything I'm doing is productive for God. Now, Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Now, the main thing that I want to highlight there is do not conform to the pattern of this world. The reason why is because conforming is the easy thing to do. Most people will take the easy route. The easy route is to relax in your bed and sleep in. The easy route is to not work your ass off and just be okay with being okay. The easy route is to not realize how privileged you are. The easy route is to take things for advantage. Okay? Do not conform to that, because that, in my belief, is very evil. I think that conforming to that societal norm is not leading you down a constructive path. That's, again, why I truly believe that it is my duty to work my ass off. Because most people are taking things for granted. Most people are doing the wrong things. I can't conform to that, because I'd be a hypocrite. I don't think that we were put in this world just for a laugh. I don't think we're put in this world just to have fun. I think that fun is a bad thing in a very roundabout aspect. I think that fun is cool, it's great, but the more fun you have, the harder things get, the less fun you have. The more you suffer, the more fun you can have and actually get away with it. Now, that's a whole different kind of topic in an episode that we can talk about, but fun isn't necessarily a value or a virtue that I think should be chased after very often. I think that it's the same with pride. I don't think you should be very prideful. I use the word pride, although I do want to try and change that out of my vocabulary a little bit, because I think that pride is bad, but I don't know a better way to explain what I mean by taking pride in things specifically. I think that maybe striving is a better word for pride. I spoke with a good friend about this the other day, about how the pride aspect, why are we prideful? Why should we have pride when everything that we're doing is planned by God? In my belief, okay? I believe that everything that we're doing is planned by God. Therefore, why should I take pride in the things that I've done when truly all of it's for God? All of it was planned by God. Everything that I have done, from me moving my right hand up to there, God knew I was going to do that. God made me do that. Why should I then be proud that I did this? I'm not saying that's a crazy achievement, but then comparing that to a monumental event. Let's say I'm Usain Bolt and I've won the 100-meter race and I was in 10 seconds or whatever he did. Should I be prideful that I did that? Or should I be grateful that God let me do that? And all that was a vessel for God's message. That is where I think we should kind of be less prideful. Okay. Commit to the Lord. Proverbs 16:3. Commit to the Lord whatever you do and he will establish your plans. Pretty similar to my point there is this, you should be doing everything for God, and his plans for you are already written.
Hey guys, I don't want to interrupt this episode, but gotta do what I gotta do. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you leave a comment if you enjoyed it. If you want any to give any feedback, even just leave that below. We're open to everything. Join the Patreon, guys. There's gonna be a lot more stuff on there. We want to hear from you guys as well. We want to get you involved. If you want to be beta testers to the SCULPTED app, let me know. I can make that happen. Try and get involved at any level. What we're doing at Live Free, guys, make sure you check what we're doing there. Liam's got his own personal YouTube channel. He's always uploading. I've got my own personal YouTube channel that I've started uploading twice a month now. It's going to be cinematic like I am now, right? I've got the light above, got a cool camera. That's what I'm going to be working on, guys. So make sure you follow Live Free Diaries. SCULPTED app. We're doing great stuff over there. Additionally, we want to grow this podcast, guys. And the only way we can do that is through your guys' help. So make sure you subscribe, listen to us on all audio platforms. We're everywhere. So make sure you interact with us. Make sure that you help us grow, because the only way that we can grow this podcast is through you. We'll get better guests. We've always had great guests from the get-go, but we'll get even better guests on. Production value will go up. I've got my studio, but we need to get Liam his studio, and the only way we can do that is through monetizing this platform. So make sure you do that, guys. And I'll go back to the episode. I'll let you go.
Okay. From me uploading this episode to me speaking in this episode, everything has already been done. There is no conception of time in heaven. There is no conception of time. Conception? I think that's the wrong word. There is no perception of time in heaven. There is no perception of time when God is in wherever God is. That's something I can't answer. I don't know where God is, but there is no perception of time. Therefore, everything that's happened in front of us, it's a massive timeline. where time isn't even a factor on it. It's just basically a massive line from what I would, best understand. It's probably just a massive line with a sequence of events, almost like you're editing this podcast in Final Cut Pro or After Effects or Premiere Pro. You've got that timeline, and you can say that's Nick's timeline. You can see there's beginning and the end, but everything in between, that's just the time within. Now, again, I can't really say what a better word than time is because we can't conceptualize time when we're dead, but that's what eternity is. Now, bringing it back to why it's my duty to work my ass off. I summarized it very well in a different document, which I'll quickly try and find. And it was going over basically what my ideology is. And I think that I'm pretty consistent with this ideology. Now, of course, I'm going to think I'm consistent because that's confirmation bias. But it's something that I really, really tried to think out a lot. And I think that I came to pretty good conclusions. So I believe that every individual has a responsibility to strive towards becoming the best version of themselves, guided by the example set by Jesus. So essential to my ideology itself is the concept of sculpting, which what this podcast is about, which will actively shape the refining one's character, values, and abilities to align with the ideal of personal excellence. And what personal excellence is, there is no perfect version of Nick. That perfect version of Nick is God and Jesus. Okay. So when I think about the best version of myself, it's just edging closer and closer to Jesus. It's something that I remember when I was younger, it was a song, Be Like Jesus. And it's stuck in my head already. And that's really where I, bring that back to. I've got to be better because I'm so far away from perfect. It truly is my duty to get closer and closer to that best version of myself. And the fact that I'm in such a better position than anyone else, not anyone else, but I'm in such a better position to get close to that best version of myself because I don't have to worry about food. I don't have to worry about where my next meal's coming from. I don't have to worry about where I'm sleeping tonight because I don't have to worry about those specific things. It's so much easier for me to get to a better version of myself than so many other people in the world. Therefore, it's truly my duty to do so. Those people who are in a less fortunate position than I am, they're probably doing a better version of getting to the best version of themselves than I am. Because I'm so worried about the modern worries and the worldly pleasures that are stopping me from getting to the best version of myself. Now, in the world that I live in even the country that I live in, I do have to worry about these specific things as much as the next person in a less impoverished country, in a more impoverished country has to worry about their next food and survival and those things. But guess what? Their core ideology is linked to everything that God, everything's for God, everything's for Jesus, whatever that is. They might not even know the story, the complete story, but you'd find that a lot of them are more faithful than what we see in the West. And honestly, fair play to them. Hats off to them. I don't want to go into the philanthropy stuff too much, but I think that it's truly our duty to work our ass off. Now, deep episode, guys. Deep episode. I don't know if you agree with me. I'd love to, hear your thoughts, challenge me on it. I always like to be challenged on these different things because it either invalidates my idea, it makes me question it, or it confirms it. So, yeah, really deep one, guys. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, let me know what you thought. If you have any altering views, perspectives, let me know. We can do an episode. We can speak about it. But all in all, guys, I think it was a pretty interesting one. That's why I believe that it is my duty to work my ass off. And I think it's also your duty to work your ass off. Because if you're in the position to even listen to this podcast, you're in a better position than most people in this world. Just think about it alone. India and China make up probably like 40% of the world population. Now, maybe in China, they've probably got a bit more privilege than most Indians, for example, but that's still such a large percentage of the world just in two countries alone who probably can't even access this podcast. You're in a better position than them. So on that, it's your duty to work your ass off. And if you aren't, then honestly, you and I will probably never see eye to eye. Now, I'm not saying my opinion can't change, but I'm pretty fair rooted in my stance here. And, I'm not to say I won't change. It may as well, but my position, I hold it strong and I stay pretty firm with, if you're not working your ass off to become the best version of yourself, you're not working your ass off to do as much as you can It's an insult to a fair chunk of the population. It's an insult to your family. I think that it's an insult to your creator. I think that it's very insulting that you, lack the self-awareness. Now, not to say you can't change. I hope that you do. But that's why I believe that it's your duty to work your ass off. But guys, I hope you enjoyed it. When I catch you on the next episode.